My father always believed money was the only true measure of a person's worth. On the day I decided to leave Montgomery Development, he made certain to demonstrate exactly how little he thought I was worth. My stomach clenched as I watched him glare at me across the polished conference table, his eyes cold with disdain as he dramatically tossed my environmental impact report onto the floor. "Women are too emotional for business," he sneered, his voice cutting through the tense silence. "Always letting feelings cloud their judgment instead of focusing on profits." At 26, fresh from MIT with my environmental engineering master's degree, my parents hadn't even bothered to attend my graduation ceremony. Standing in the vast, sterile expanse of our corporate boardroom with nothing but my laptop bag and shattered hopes, I felt my cheeks burn with humiliation as my meticulously prepared proposal scattered across the marble floor like fallen dreams. Surrounding me was the imposing power of the Montgomery Empire, gleaming glass walls, executive leather chairs, and intimidating digital displays, everything proudly showcasing our family's real estate dominance. Our dynasty had always been property developers. Generations had walked the prestigious corridors of Montgomery Development Group. It was expected, a predetermined path every Montgomery child would follow, except I dared to challenge that tradition. Environmental engineering, my father had scoffed when I first announced my graduate program choice. Tree huggers and idealists who can't survive in the real world. No daughter of mine will waste her talent on saving plants while real opportunities pass her by. Yet I clearly saw what he and the rest of the family refused to acknowledge. While they recklessly developed land with no concern beyond immediate profits, I envisioned a different future, one built on sustainability, innovation, and balance. The next great fortunes wouldn't come from concrete jungles and environmental destruction. They would emerge from harmony between progress and preservation, created by minds brave enough to challenge outdated thinking. My mother perched elegantly at the side of the conference room, absently twirling the stem of her water glass, though I knew she'd spike it with vodka the moment the meeting ended. "Elise, darling," she said with practiced concern that never reached her eyes. "Be reasonable. Brad's project just needs your environmental expertise to fix those minor issues. Your father can arrange a director position for you." I looked at her, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time. Her perfectly arranged smile hadn't reached her eyes in years. Throughout my childhood, I'd watched her measure her worth by her social standing and designer wardrobe, each charity gala more extravagant than the last, desperately trying to fill an emptiness that seemed bottomless. "No, Mother," I replied, my voice surprisingly steady despite the storm of emotions inside me. "I'm done being the daughter you both wish I was instead of who I am." My father's face darkened instantly, his complexion turning that dangerous shade of crimson I'd feared since childhood. "Then get out," he thundered, voice vibrating with disappointment and rage. "You're choosing wilderness over family. You're walking away from your inheritance, your connections, your legacy, all for some ridiculous environmental crusade." With trembling fingers that I forced to steady, I knelt and gathered my scattered report. Each page represented countless hours of research proving this wetland deserved protection rather than becoming my brother's failed luxury development project. "Keep your condescension," I said, tucking the report into my leather portfolio. "I'll build something meaningful on my own." My father laughed, the harsh sound bouncing off the sleek conference room walls. "You build something? You can barely navigate a corporate meeting," he mocked, gesturing contemptuously at my professional but modest blazer and slacks, a stark contrast to his immaculate custom Armani suit. "Without the Montgomery name opening doors, you're just another idealistic girl with dreams too big for reality." His cutting words burned into my memory, fueling me through countless sleepless nights and driving me forward whenever obstacles seemed insurmountable. But in that moment, I simply straightened my spine, met his gaze, and promised quietly, "Just watch me." I walked out of Montgomery Development's glass headquarters with nothing but my environmental research, my laptop bag, and the master's degree my family considered worthless. Behind me, the automatic doors whispered shut, the sound marking both an ending and a beginning. Standing on the sidewalk, reality crashed over me like a wave. I had no company backing, no family support, and my savings wouldn't last long in Boston. Yet I possessed something my family had never valued: a clear vision for sustainable technology and the fierce determination to make it reality. I texted Rebecca, an old classmate from MIT who now worked at a tech startup. Within an hour, she'd offered her couch while I figured things out. That night, in her modest apartment that felt both terrifying and liberating after my family's mansion, I opened my laptop and created a new document titled Clean Horizon: 3 Promises. I would never use the Montgomery name to open doors. I would create technology that healed rather than exploited the environment, and above all, I would prove my worth through impact, not inheritance. Just like that, I had an entry-level coding position at Rebecca's startup and a place to sleep, even if it was just a lumpy second-hand couch in a cramped apartment with thin walls. During the day, I wrote basic code and managed the company's database, accepting work that was far beneath my qualifications. At night, I hunched over my laptop, refining designs for a revolutionary water purification system that could simultaneously generate energy, using the company's Wi-Fi to research patents and study environmental engineering advances. Rebecca would often join me after her shift ended, bringing leftover takeout from the office. Her sharp mind quickly grasped the technical aspects of my work, and her practical questions helped refine my thinking in ways pure theory never could. One night, as she studied my latest simulation results, she asked, "So you're basically creating a system that cleans water while producing power?" "Not just that," I explained, pointing to the molecular diagrams on my screen. "Conventional purification systems require massive energy input and still leave trace contaminants. I'm designing a catalyst structure that can remove 99% of pollutants while generating electricity through the chemical process itself." She looked up, eyebrows raised. "Why isn't anyone else working on this?" "Because it's considered economically impractical," I replied with a determined smile. "But I think I've found an approach that changes the equation entirely." After 3 months of working at the startup, I'd saved enough to contribute to rent as Rebecca's official roommate. Our apartment was small and dated, but it offered me a dedicated corner for my research station. To supplement my meager income, I started participating in weekend hackathons, where my environmental engineering solutions consistently impressed the judges. At one such event, I tackled a water filtration challenge that had stumped several all-male teams from prestigious tech companies. The elegant solution I developed caught the attention of Marcus Chen, a prominent angel investor known for supporting women in sustainable technology. "Your algorithm is brilliant," Marcus said after I'd explained my solution. "It cuts through complexity with elegant simplicity. What else are you working on?" I hesitated, weighing my options, then decided to trust him. I pulled up the designs for my water purification and energy generation system. Marcus studied my technical diagrams intently, his expression growing more serious with each slide. After several minutes of silence, he finally spoke. "This could fundamentally transform how we approach environmental remediation and clean energy, but you'll need substantial funding to build even a basic prototype." "I know," I replied quietly, never mentioning my family's wealth or the inheritance I'd walked away from. "I'm exploring options." Marcus became more than just a contact. He introduced me to Dr. Naomi Wright, a pioneering environmental engineer at MIT with breakthrough work in catalytic processes. She subjected my research to 7 grueling hours of intense scrutiny, methodically probing for weaknesses and inconsistencies in my approach. Finally, she leaned back in her chair, a hint of excitement breaking through her professional reserve. "It's ambitious, possibly economically unfeasible, but if it works." She paused, tapping her pen thoughtfully against her notepad. "I have access to MIT's Clean Tech Laboratory. Would you be interested in using those facilities for further development? Would I be interested in using one of the country's most advanced environmental technology labs?" My heart raced, but I kept my voice steady as I replied, "Yes, I would appreciate that opportunity immensely." For the next 8 months, my schedule was punishing. Mornings coding at the startup, afternoons at hackathons or consulting gigs, evenings and weekends conducting intensive experiments at MIT's Clean Tech Lab. Rebecca often joined me, providing both technical assistance and emotional support when experiments failed. I survived on determination, green tea, and the burning desire to prove my father wrong. The breakthrough happened unexpectedly at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. I'd been systematically testing different catalyst configurations for weeks when the results appeared on my screen. My hands trembled as I ran the analysis 3 times to confirm what I was seeing. The prototype had achieved 99.1% purification efficiency while generating a consistent energy output, a dual function previously deemed economically impossible. Dr. Wright verified the results herself, meticulously reviewing every data point. "This isn't just incremental improvement," she said, unable to hide her excitement. "This fundamentally changes the equation for water remediation economics." Within weeks, I was presenting to potential investors. Marcus helped refine my business plan while Rebecca ruthlessly challenged me with the toughest questions investors might ask. The first 3 meetings ended with polite rejections: too risky, too ambitious, too revolutionary. The 4th meeting was different. Lisa Blackwell, managing partner at Green Future Fund, studied me carefully before asking, "Your technology could transform environmental restoration efforts worldwide, but why should we trust a 26-year-old with limited business experience?" Meeting her gaze steadily, I replied, "Because I've spent the past year proving that what experts call economically unfeasible can actually be profitable. Give me the chance, and I'll demonstrate how healing our environment can also heal our bottom line." Impressed by both the technology and my conviction, Green Future Fund invested $8 million for a 20% stake in Clean Horizon Technologies, my tribute to the clear vision that had guided me since leaving my family behind. With this funding, I established our research facility in a repurposed warehouse, bringing together a diverse team of brilliant engineers passionate about environmental innovation. Together we weathered countless technical challenges, equipment failures, and moments when our vision seemed hopelessly idealistic. But after 2 grueling years of relentless work, our persistence paid off. Our first commercial-scale water purification and energy generation system was ready for field testing. When the results came in from an industrial site cleanup, they exceeded even our most optimistic projections. The system removed 99.2% of contaminants while generating enough electricity to power its own operations plus additional capacity, making it not just environmentally revolutionary but economically viable. This breakthrough sent shockwaves through both environmental and energy sectors, transforming polluted water from a liability into a potential power source. Suddenly, multinational corporations and government agencies were clamoring for our technology. Clean Horizon secured major implementation contracts for industrial waste remediation, and our valuation soared to over $1.5 billion just 3 years after that initial investment. As founder and majority shareholder, my personal worth had surpassed $300 million. For the first time since leaving my family, I purchased a designer outfit, not from my mother's preferred luxury boutiques, but from a sustainable fashion brand created by a female entrepreneur. Rebecca, now our Chief Technology Officer, accompanied me to the fitting. "Getting ready for those magazine cover shoots," she teased, adjusting the collar of my tailored blazer. "Not exactly," I replied, studying my reflection with a mixture of satisfaction and resolution. "I think it's finally time to revisit Montgomery development." I hadn't spoken to my family in 6 years, but through industry news and environmental regulatory filings, I'd followed Montgomery Development's growing troubles. The real estate giant was faltering, facing multiple lawsuits over my brother Brad's failed Lakeside Heights project, which had contaminated a protected watershed exactly as my rejected report had predicted. Now under investigation by the EPA and hemorrhaging investors, they were desperately seeking a partnership with an environmental remediation firm called Green Recovery Initiative. What my family didn't know was that Green Recovery Initiative was a subsidiary of Clean Horizon Technologies, my company. I booked a flight to Boston, contemplating my journey from rejected daughter to industry pioneer. Yet this wasn't about gloating or revenge. I was returning to rescue the very land I'd fought to protect from my family's destructive development practices. Before leaving, Rebecca noticed me studying satellite images of the damaged wetlands near my childhood home. "Are you sure you're ready for this confrontation?" she asked gently. I closed my laptop and responded with quiet determination. "They taught me that money is the only measure of worth. I'm going to show them that healing what they've broken is worth more than everything they've built." I couldn't have anticipated how profoundly my return would shake the Montgomery family, how complex the emotions would be when facing them again, or how the principles they had scorned would ultimately become their only salvation. The headquarters of Montgomery Development Group stood unchanged, still imposingly sleek with its glass facade, gilded logo, and atmosphere of unquestioned authority. This time, however, I walked confidently through the revolving doors not as the disappointing daughter but as the CEO of the company they desperately needed to save them from environmental disaster. "Ms. Montgomery, for the crisis meeting," I informed the receptionist calmly, using my family name deliberately this time. She directed me to the executive floor, completely unaware of the significance of my return. Stepping into the familiar conference room felt surreal. Everything remained unchanged: the panoramic city views, digital display walls tracking development projects, and the Montgomery family portrait prominently featured near the CEO's chair. As a teenager, I'd sat silently in that room during Bring Your Child to Work days, watching my father prioritize profit over sustainability while my brother nodded eagerly at every word. Today I wasn't the silent observer. I was standing confidently at the presentation podium, ready to reclaim both my worth and the environment they damaged. I arranged my materials at the head of the gleaming conference table and waited. Gradually, board members filed in, followed by executives, environmental lawyers, and finally my father and brother. The years had taken their toll on my father. Deep lines etched his face, his shoulders slightly stooped under the weight of mounting lawsuits and regulatory penalties. His commanding presence had diminished, his legendary confidence cracked. He glanced at me without recognition, his gaze sliding past as he took his seat. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began professionally, "I'm here representing Green Recovery Initiative regarding our proposed environmental remediation partnership for the Lakeside Heights situation. We're not interested in giving control of our project to some environmental group," my father retorted sharply, still not recognizing me. "Montgomery Development has built this city for 3 generations. And you'll face bankruptcy within 1 more if you don't address the environmental disaster you've created," I replied, allowing my natural voice to emerge. "Isn't that what your own reports indicate, Father?" A profound silence enveloped the room. My father turned toward me, the color draining from his face as recognition dawned. "Elise," he whispered. "Hello, Father. Surprised to see me?" Mrs. Watkins, a senior board member who had known me since childhood, stared in astonishment. "Little Elise Montgomery?" "It's still Elise Montgomery," I clarified with quiet confidence. "And I'm not here as your daughter. I'm here as the CEO of Clean Horizon Technologies and its subsidiary, Green Recovery Initiative." My father's expression transformed from shock to indignation. "This is some kind of revenge plot. You're behind Green Recovery?" I maintained my composure, meeting his gaze steadily. "I founded Clean Horizon Technologies. Green Recovery Initiative is our environmental remediation division." The room erupted in murmurs as the realization spread. "Yes," I confirmed. "Clean Horizon Technologies, the company revolutionizing water purification and sustainable energy generation worldwide." "Impossible," my brother Brad muttered. "You had nothing when you left." "I had my education, my research, and my determination," I replied evenly. "Those proved far more valuable than the inheritance I walked away from. Would you like to see exactly what I've built while you were contaminating protected wetlands?" I nodded to my assistant, who distributed comprehensive folders to each person at the table. Clean Horizon Technologies is currently valued at $1.5 billion. We've developed and implemented water remediation systems across 3 continents. Green Recovery Initiative, which your environmental team apparently failed to properly research, is our specialized division for ecological restoration. We've been quietly acquiring the conservation land surrounding your failed development. I opened my folder and surveyed the tense faces around the table. Our environmental assessment confirms that the contamination from lakeside heights has spread to groundwater systems. The EPA findings will be devastating. However, we've developed a comprehensive remediation plan that could not only solve the environmental crisis but potentially turn it into a showcase for sustainable redevelopment. My father's face had gone ashen. The daughter he had dismissed as an impractical dreamer had returned with the only viable solution to save what remained of his crumbling empire. Our proposal is straightforward, I continued professionally. Montgomery Development will partner with Green Recovery Initiative to implement our water purification system. 30% of the lakeside property will be permanently designated as a protected wetland reserve. Your company will adopt our sustainable development guidelines for all future projects. I looked directly at my father. And Brad will step down as Vice President of Development, effective immediately. You can't dictate terms to us, my brother sputtered, his perfectly coiffed hair falling slightly out of place. Your company is facing EPA fines that could exceed $100 million, plus class action lawsuits from affected homeowners, I replied evenly. Your stock has plummeted 43% in 6 months. The environmental remediation alone will cost more than your current liquid assets. Without our partnership, Montgomery Development won't survive until the end of the quarter. Mrs. Watkins cleared her throat. Elise, surely there's a compromise that keeps the management structure intact. After all, this is still your family's company. No, I stated firmly. You all made it abundantly clear the day I walked out that my environmental concerns meant nothing compared to profit margins. I stopped being part of this family when I chose to protect the future instead of exploiting it for quick gains. I'm not here for reconciliation. I'm here to save the ecosystem you've damaged. I stood, smoothing the sustainable fabric of my designer blazer that cost more than most people's monthly salary. You have 72 hours to accept our terms. Refuse, and we'll withdraw our offer. The EPA findings go public next week, and your shareholders will abandon you within days. My father finally found his voice. You would let your family's company collapse over some environmental principle? No, I replied steadily. You endangered the company when you ignored my environmental impact warnings. I'm offering the only viable path forward, one that preserves jobs, restores the environment, and yes, even saves your reputation. But whether Montgomery Development continues to operate with the same destructive philosophy? That's no longer your decision. I gathered my materials and headed toward the door, then paused and turned back. Oh, and Father, remember that environmental report you threw on the floor? It predicted exactly the contamination pattern we're seeing now. When you said money is the only true measure of a person's worth, I said, my voice calm but resolute, by your own standards, what does my billion-dollar solution to your multi-million-dollar mistake say about my worth now? The next 3 days unfolded in a flurry of legal discussions and media speculation. News that Clean Horizon Technologies was stepping in to rescue the troubled Montgomery Development project sent ripples through both real estate and environmental sectors. Stock prices stabilized, analysts debated the partnership's implications, and my father tried desperately to find alternative solutions. He called former allies and lobbied board members, but I had anticipated every move. Every potential escape route was blocked, every technical question answered with irrefutable data. In the same conference room where he had once dismissed my environmental concerns, the partnership agreement was signed. My father's company would survive, but transformed. As the final documents were executed, he approached me. He looked every bit his 58 years, humbled, yes, but in his weary eyes I glimpsed something unexpected. Perhaps recognition, perhaps even a reluctant respect. You planned this, he said quietly. You knew the development would fail. No, Father, I replied. You did, the day you dismissed environmental protection as worthless sentimentality. I simply created something better than you could imagine. He hesitated, studying me. And now, will you destroy everything out of spite? I held his gaze for a long moment. No. I'm going to transform it into something sustainable. Montgomery Development will become part of a company that solves environmental crises instead of creating them. We'll restore ecosystems, not just erect buildings. But you've essentially taken control. That's the natural consequence of your choices. As I gathered my materials, he called after me. Elise, that environmental report. I turned back with a small smile. Best rejection I ever received. It showed me exactly what path not to follow. The transition took 6 months. We reimagined everything, implementing sustainable construction practices, establishing an environmental compliance division, and retaining most employees who embraced the new direction. My father stepped back to an advisory role, his reputation tarnished but his financial security intact. I ensured the settlement was fair. My mother called several times, leaving voicemails about reconciliation dinners, but I wasn't ready. Some relationships need distance to heal, if they ever do. 8 months later, standing in my office at Clean Horizons headquarters overlooking Boston Harbor, Rebecca brought in a package from my father. Inside was a framed photograph of the wetlands I'd fought to protect, now fully restored through our remediation technology, along with a handwritten note, "You saw value where I saw only obstacles." I took that photograph to the first site where we'd tested our water purification system. The same environmental scientists who had helped develop our prototype now led our global implementation teams, but they still remembered celebrating our first successful field test. I donated $99,000 to establish an environmental education center there. Some might interpret my actions as elaborate revenge, but they weren't. I didn't intervene in my family's company to punish them. I did it because sometimes protecting what matters requires confronting those who would destroy it. They say you can't put a price on clean water and healthy ecosystems, but my journey taught me something more profound. True worth isn't measured by wealth or family legacy. It's measured by the positive impact you create with whatever resources you have. And I built a company that heals, not because of my family connections, but by transcending the limitations they tried to impose. That rejected environmental report didn't just mark the end of my old life, it catalyzed the beginning of something more meaningful. And the success that followed? Simply confirmation that sustainability isn't just ethically right, it's economically powerful.